So I am drinking some old coffee from this morning, but I'd like to highlight the mug that I'm drinking from. I drink from this every Saturday and Sunday. It is positive mind, positive vibes, positive life. And it just reminds me to slow down from the rat race that, most of our weeks turn into, especially now that we're working from home. On the other end of the pandemic, most folks are still doing a lot of heavy lifting from at home on their devices, and it doesn't allow us to really unwind and disconnect and just be very present. And so this mug is, my weekend reminder to do just that, to just be positive and to try to refocus and just bring it all back to center.
Nice. I like that. I like that mantra. Very nice. And so I'm not doing a President Trump thing here, and I'm holding the bottom of the mug. But this is my husband's firefighter mug. And so just a shout out to all of the first responders, number one being Breonna Taylor. As I understand it, there's still been no charges filed. I hope to talk about this more with you, Victoria and Robyn. And inside, I've got tea today, and it's called Throat Coat. And it's a combination of herbs and echinacea, and it's really good for your throat. And so that is what I'm drinking today. And thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us on Political Coffee.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm still checking with Kyle about everything, but I'm recording it, so we'll have it covered either way. But so Victoria, so you're running for prosecutor for Wayne County, and what you'll be on the ballot in what the election is August 4th. Is that correct?
August 4th, yeah.
Okay, so what made you decide to run for prosecutor? Because I just think about, I've been practicing 18 years as a criminal defense attorney, and I just think about it. Seems like being a prosecutor is a pretty daunting task.
It's intense.
Yeah. So I'll be very transparent, and I, will tell you that I did not raise my hand and say I want to be an elected official or a county prosecutor. I was asked by several folks in the community and, folks who are lawyers in the criminal justice system. They asked me well over a year ago if I would give some serious consideration to running, that we had not had anyone run for that position in 16 years. People have filed to run, but then they had rescinded their filings. And so we have been electing the same prosecutor for 16 years without a serious challenger. And initially I said no. I said no several times. I, to be honest with you, was repulsed by the idea of a traditional prosecutor. I did not want to take on that job and be that gatekeeper that routinely sends people to jail and prison. And after I said no to several folks, one of my very good friends, who is the executive director of a fabulous nonprofit, which I will not name because of their tax filing status, but she is on the ground and leading the way in criminal justice reform here in Detroit. And she encouraged me to look at other progressive prosecutors around the country, like Rachel Rollins, like Kim Foxx, and Rachel Rollins is in Boston, Kim Foxx is in Chicago, Larry Krasner in Philadelphia. And at the time that we had this conversation, Jason Boudin was running, but he had not won his election. He has since won. And so I looked at them and I looked at how progressive prosecutors were taking those jobs from incumbents and they were using the power for good. They were not just out to put people in jails and prisons. They were ending cash bail as prosecutors. They were bringing victim-centered restorative justice practices to their counties as prosecutors. They were calling an end to the failed war on drugs. And they were deciding to decriminalize a lot of nonviolent, low-level petty misdemeanors in an effort to not bring people into the criminal justice system. And so when I started to read more and started to read the work of Professor Angela J. Davis on what it means to be a prosecutor, I realized that that's where I do need to be. As a criminal defense attorney, we know that our toolbox is very, very small. we know that we have to wait for people to come into this system before we're allowed to help them. And I'm at a place in my life and in my career where I want to do more. I want to help more people. I don't want to wait for people to be charged. I now want to say, you won't be charged, and I'm going to divert you out of the criminal justice system and send you into the hands and arms of community partners who can give you the resources to address mental health issues, drug and substance abuse, right? To give you the resources to address the underlying trauma and the poverty that is at the center of criminality. And that's something that we haven't had here in Wayne County. So I'm very excited about this opportunity.
Okay, and how long have you been practicing as an attorney?
I graduated from law school in 2012 from Wayne State. I started my own practice in 2014, and I have practiced criminal defense ever since.
Okay, and I think Tracey, you had a question.
Yes, and Victoria, I was reading up on you in your bio, and I understand that you're a native of Flint and a graduate of Flint Southwestern Academy, raised by a working single mom. And I just wondered, like, what is the Detroit Flint connection for you?
So I left Flint when I graduated from high school, and I went to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor for undergrad, studied political science and African American studies, became very familiar with this nexus of, Black people and Black history and the US political system. And from there, I went to law school in Detroit and, made some bonds and relationships and connections with folks that I didn't turn away from, and I stayed here because Detroit reminded me so much of my hometown in Flint. And being in Detroit allowed me to serve very similar community from where I came from. And I have been here ever since. I have been on the front lines as a people's lawyer, working with the National Lawyers Guild, Michigan Detroit chapter, as well as the National Conference of Black Lawyers Detroit chapter. And I have spent a lot of time in Detroit communities with grassroots organizations, serving them, representing them. And it's been a joy. It's been an absolute pleasure. I do go home often to Flint and take cases. And as I, over the last few years, become a mom to a precious 2-year-old child named Langston, I have not had the ability to get on the highway and travel as much home to take some of those cases. But I have, in the beginning of my career, I was up and down the highway. Wherever the work was, is where I went. And, I look at Flint, Saginaw, Detroit, and Benton Harbor as, those, and Pontiac too. Those are the Black cities in this state who you really can't separate just because they, have different boundaries and they're in different cities. Those communities all look alike, right? And so wherever I find my people is where I find my home. And I have spent my career serving Detroiters and Wayne County, and I will continue to serve them.
Okay, and you specialize, you do criminal defense and family law, or like what are all your specialties?
Criminal, nope. I am not what you call a Jill of all trades. I focus on criminal law and family law because as you both know as lawyers, you are most effective when you continue your legal education and you attend trainings to hone your skills and get better and better. And so I didn't have the time and certainly the money to, practice in 10 different areas and train consistently and attend seminars and conferences in all of those areas. I was very intentional about picking my practice areas when I got out of law school because I wanted to work directly with people. I did not want to do work with corporations. I had tried my hand at that in law school and realized I hated it. And I wanted to work on the ground with real people with real problems. And you can do that with criminal defense and family law. You can make a real big difference.
Well, Victoria, speaking of real people and real problems, you're a native of Flint. I mean, what's going on with the people of Flint today in light of the Flint water crisis? And if you care to comment on how all the criminal charges were dropped, I mean, what's next for the people of Flint in terms of getting real justice?
Well, that would be up to our current prosecutor who has been tasked with handling the Flint water crisis. Our Michigan Attorney General tasked her with that And to my knowledge, charges have yet to be brought. We have gone past the statute of limitations for the charges that we all knew about that could have been brought. Hopefully there are other charges that can still be brought that the statute of limitations has not run on. But as far as for the people of Flint, my entire family is there. My parents, my grandmother, my aunts and uncles, my church family, everyone is still there. And I can tell you that folks are still using filters. The water has not gotten better. People have just gotten better with learning how to deal with it. My uncle is someone who was directly impacted. He was a police officer with the city of Flint. His entire career he spent on the force. Very well known, very well respected officer. And he's the lead plaintiff in one of the actions that Julie Hurwitz has brought here in Detroit on behalf of the Flint Water. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's been a big issue because I know Tracey and I have talked about Ben Crump's book, The Legalized Genocide of Colored People, and that's one of the things that he does raise. He talks about, and he's been here to Flint. He's come to Flint and talked to the people. I've had some folks I've talked to in Flint, and they've talked about, the water crisis, and we look at other countries like the water issues, and it's a matter of. To me, it just doesn't make any sense that you would have people that have poisoned the water, poisoned disproportionately Black folk, poor folk, working class folk, and that I don't understand. I don't understand why the Attorney General, why they haven't prosecuted that. That's an issue. And then you're running for prosecutor in Wayne County. In Wayne County, there have also been concerns about the water quality. I know also when I've been reading Ben Crump's book, The Legalized Genocide of Open Season, Legalized Genocide of Colored People, he also talks about the 48217 zip code as being one of the most polluted parts of the state. And there's issues, there are plants that are there, and there's issues with pollution. And so and you're running for prosecutor. If you were to become prosecutors, would you try to take some kind of action in dealing with these issues about the air quality and water and issues of Black folks or working class folks being affected by the conditions?
Absolutely. I can tell you that I've been in contact with folks at the Sierra Club, Michigan chapter. I've had conversations with some of our water warriors here in Detroit. I've also had conversations with environmental justice warriors in Detroit. And when you talk about water quality, air quality, those are all directly related to the criminal justice space as well. You cannot separate them. And because we know that when you don't have clean water, when we know that when you don't have clean air and you have children, that seeps into your child, and it's one of the root causes of the school to prison pipeline, right? And when we don't address that, we don't adequately address the school to prison pipeline. And so it's incumbent upon you as an elected prosecutor to make sure that you are holding all bad actors accountable, not just some of them, not just folks on the street, but those who are behind the scenes and contribute to the pollution of our water and our air, and the poison of our children. And that has to be taken into consideration when we fashion our policies and our platforms. My written platform is available on my website, and you will find that I intend to, and I put it in writing because I want people to hold me accountable.
What's your website?
Victoria2020.org.
Oh, okay.
I want people to say, okay, she's a lawyer, she put it in writing, so we can hold her to it. I'm not going to snatch it down after the election. I intend to have a transition team with me who will eventually become my advisory board and keep me grounded, keep me tethered to the community, and make sure that I'm doing what I promised to do. If I promise to hold all bad actors accountable, including those environmental polluters, that I'm actually doing that. And I've already started to reach out to folks in that environmental justice space just to ensure that my vision is what the people need, who are on the ground working in those issues. And they're all very excited. They said that they've never had prosecutors who cared about environmental justice. I've spoken with folks at Wayne State who do this work on a professional level. And they're like, you would be a godsend to Wayne County if you actually got in there and cared about environmental justice. So it's not that, it can't be done from a prosecutor. We see it in other areas. And it's not that it can't be done here because our experts tell us it can. It just never has.
That is a new spin on things. So, Victoria, and I'm so glad to hear that environmental justice is going to be part of your platform because, as you know, not only do we have issues with water shutoffs, but, with pollution and air quality, the late State Representative Isaac Robinson worked so hard with other community activists to get that in Detroit incinerator shut down. And as I understand it, it's going to go back into operation. And, we have a problem with lead. You can relate to that with, your family being in Flint. So is this all part of your overall constellation of restorative justice that you're talking about, that you're running on?
I would say no, that's something that's a bit separate. So this is a part of accountability,
Okay.
keeping me accountable and holding bad actors accountable. As it relates to restorative justice, I've been in contact with a woman named Danielle Sered out of Brooklyn. She runs a victim-centered restorative justice program called Common Justice. She's very well known in the criminal justice world. She has gone around the country and helped prosecutors, elected prosecutors, set up restorative justice programs in their county. And, she actually did come to Wayne County a few years ago to offer her services and to bring restorative justice to Wayne County, the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, and it was rejected. At the time, it was not wanted. And so, more and more prosecutors are jumping on the bandwagon of saying, oh, well, people want restorative justice, we'll give it to you. Well, restorative justice is not just a term that you can throw around. Restorative justice does not come after a person has been convicted and sentenced. Restorative justice comes into play in the very beginning, and it offers a therapeutic way to address the trauma, the underlying trauma, both with a crime survivor and the person who needs to be held accountable. It allows the crime survivor to have a hand in deciding, how that bad actor is held accountable, right?
Right.
I've spoken with crime survivors in various advocacy groups, Survivor Speak, the Alliance for Safety and Justice, and I routinely am told and then I've sought out victims in just cases in Wayne County just to see what their experience was with the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office and how I could, as a new prosecutor, service them better. And I continue to hear, for instance, I had a meet and greet with some leaders in the LGBTQ community recently as a candidate, and their biggest concern was that victims in their community are thrown away, that they are made to feel like they don't matter. When they are victims of hate crimes because of their sexual orientation, they are, dismissed, phone calls never returned, no follow-up, no explanation given, no transparency. And they want that to stop. They want a victim's advocate that has some experience and specializes in LGBTQ issues in that office, and not just one who can, pay lip service and can speak the language and the lingo. People are very smart. They know when you're just using language because it's catchy to do so. They are looking beyond the language. They are looking at your actions and your record. Have you done what you say you're going to do? If you've been in that position for a long time, why haven't you done that? And why is it that you're saying you'll do it now? That matters to people. I've heard from victims that they don't appreciate sitting in court, and our general trials unit, they will bring folks in as crime survivors and victims, and after a case is resolved, there's no follow-up. So if a guilty plea is secured, or if a conviction or even a not guilty is secured, the victim is just left with, oh, okay, guess that's over. And we have to change that.
Do you think that some of that, though, is, I know we talked a little bit off the before we got on the Zoom session about Wayne County. I mean, I'll say this: Wayne County for Michigan is one of the more progressive. The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office is probably the most progressive out of all the other counties. Like, I've had experience Washtenaw County, Oakland County. I mean, it's like my clients, obviously they can't pick where they get in trouble, but I definitely would say don't get in trouble in Oakland. If you get in trouble in Washtenaw, it's going to be rough.
Right.
If you get in trouble in Wayne, you might have a chance. It depends on who the prosecutor is. I would say, there are some things that we've seen that Kim Worthy has done. I mean, she was on the Malice Green case, before she became the prosecutor. She was a judge. she's been doing a lot with the rape kits, with getting funding for that. And so some of these issues that you're talking about with the victims and the follow-up, isn't that more like a funding issue? Isn't that something that maybe that the prosecutor's office could just try to get more funding? And I've gone to some of the meetings with Ms. Worthy, and she said that there have been issues with funding and grants, and she's trying to get services to people, but also Wayne County has the highest amount of cases, criminal cases. And so what's your response to that? And if you were to become prosecutor, how would you deal with having the most cases in the state?
Robyn, guess who handles the cases and decides whether there is a case or not? Your prosecutor.
Prosecutor.
So if you say you don't have the funding to prosecute all of the felony cases and the state misdemeanors that come through your office, don't charge them.
Right.
We see as defense attorneys every day cases brought in that are dismissed for lack of evidence. You'll be told that that's not true, and you'll be told, as you just, proffered, that Wayne County is more progressive than the neighboring county to the east or the neighboring county to the north. What does that say, though, about your priorities in your county? You can't deflect and say, well, I'm better than the rest, so give me credit for being better than the rest. No, you don't get that credit. In a county that's only 40% Black, yet the majority of the people that go through this system are Black. You don't get that pass. You have to answer for why is it that you criminalize petty drug offenses, why you criminalize a lot of non-violent offenses. The Michigan Jails Task Force, they made a recommendation that county prosecutors decriminalize, that they stop bringing in so many cases and instead do a cite and release citation program. That hasn't been adopted. That there's been pushback from prosecutors, from the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan. There's been pushback. So we have to push our elected officials and prosecutors on that. When they give you that response, you have to make them explain to you, well, aren't you in control of how many cases are brought into the system? Why are you bringing so many cases? That's never been answered. And that's exactly one of the reasons why I am running, so that we can stop criminalizing so many people, because we know that that is not required and necessary to create a safe and a just community. We know that when we bring people into this system, we actually are harming our communities. When you give people a criminal record and you are relegating them to the bottom of society, you are telling them that they cannot take care of themselves and their families, because once they get out and they have that criminal conviction, you have limited their options. And then what do you think they're going to do? Curl up and die, cease to live and take care of their family? Or are they going to do what they have to do and possibly start to commit crimes out of necessity, right? Like, those are the deeper issues that real progressive prosecutors around the country are getting into. And I know this because I'm having conversations with them. Okay. These are the innovative, bold, forward-thinking ways that, a lot of the, incumbent, entrenched establishment prosecutors, that is a foreign concept to them. All they know is, as a career prosecutor, bringing people in and locking them up. They will divert them after they brought them in. How about we divert them before they come in?
Right.
Okay. And
well,
so,
Victoria, you mentioned about innovation. And so, yes, there are some that say, oh, if I'm going to catch a case, I'd rather catch a case in Wayne County as opposed to another county. But what is your philosophy as to charging an individual? Because there have been many criticisms leveled at the incumbent about overcharging people who come in contact with the prosecutor's office. Would you implement a sort of a science to charging individuals instead of, multiple counts, one on top of the other, in hopes that something sticks? What's your take on that?
Well, one, I can tell you again, as a criminal defense attorney, I see that all the time, and some prosecutors that work in that office currently will tell you that, half of these charges won't stick. And that they're only brought to encourage or really force a plea on a defendant. If a defendant is charged with 8 felonies and then they're offered a plea to 3 or 4, Do you think they won't take it, especially if they're sitting in the county jail on excessive cash bill that they can't afford? And if that means they get to go home to their families, if they just plead guilty, they'll do it? Absolutely. We see it all the time. You'd be hard pressed to find a defense attorney in the system who does not see that. So we know excessive charging happens, and it's real and it's punitive. And what you can do to stop that is ensure that you are not, as an elected prosecutor, allowing your warrants division to authorize criminal complaints and bring charges when there is insufficient evidence. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the courtroom and prosecutors have closed the file, thrown it on the desk, and shaken their head because they'll say, there isn't enough evidence for this. Why would they authorize this? You know, this is not a situation of, well, we do a better job than other counties. Let's focus on what we do here. Let's focus on the people that we represent and directly impact here. And what we see is not working. There needs to be, like you said, a more streamlined process. For instance, there are some counties right now who their prosecutors are very forward thinking, and they understand that during this time in this climate that the people do not trust our law enforcement right now.
No.
And we also know in Detroit, specifically within Wayne County, that we have a list of officers who have been known to be so untruthful, both in their police reports and in their testimony, that they are not allowed to police and patrol the streets. They're not allowed to present evidence in court. We know that. So if we know that, and we also know that DPD, for instance, has a policy that when law enforcement officers come into contact with civilians or even anticipate coming into contact with civilians, that they have to turn their body-worn cameras on. If we know that, why is it not the case of at the warrant stage, our prosecutors are saying our policy is that we need to see the body cam footage? We need to have independent evidence of what it is that you're saying happened in your report. And then wouldn't that also help out defendants and their attorneys? Because as defense attorneys, when we ask for body cam footage and it's not available, we're told, well, we can't get it. The officer is on furlough. Or we have to adjourn this proceeding after we have everyone here because the defense attorney is not willing to proceed without that necessary evidence that they have a right to have. Why is it that that information cannot be secured up front? And you have a more independent analysis of what happened. And if you don't feel after reviewing that camera footage as a warrant prosecutor that, a warrant should be authorized, then you won't do it. And you decrease the number of cases unnecessarily coming into this system. And you can better balance your budget if you do that.
I think it would, I think some of the prosecutors would probably say at the time, under the traditional model of the court system, that they may not have the time. Now, because of COVID-19, there is more time for the prosecutor. I feel like I'm progressive myself. I don't think the COVID-19 should be the reason. I feel that the prosecutor should be more progressive. I have cases that are pending right now, some of them that are set for trial, some of them that we're in the midst of plea negotiations. And sometimes you have prosecutors that are reasonable, that will try to work things out with the cases. And then some of them want to play hardball where we have no choice, but we're going to have to go to trial. And I'm like, it shouldn't be that way. If we could work out really, if we could have, I would like to see from the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, I would like to see consistency where if you have clients that shouldn't be going to jail or prison and certainly not being put at risk of dying or getting sick from corona, that they should be trying to work things out, because it's like, that's what's so interesting now. Those of us as defense attorneys, we're like seeing how the system is like, it's the prison industrial complex. And the traditional system is, it's a cattle call. You're rushing people through the system. They're pleading, they're going to jail, they're going to prison. The courts have a way of functioning, but we're seeing right now, and Tracey and I have talked about this, the system is at a standstill because of COVID-19. You had somebody that died last week at Frank Murphy, who was at Frank Murphy. And so I believe right now, this all that is happening, this is part of a shift in the paradigm. And I think you're part of that as well, Victoria. This is a shift that's coming. So I know I had heard that Ms. Worthy was saying that this was going to be her last term. So I don't know if you've been asked this question. So why wouldn't you want to try to meet with her and work with her and wait to run for that position and when it's open? Like, why do you feel pressed to run for this office now?
So I'll give you two answers or two reasons for that. One, you said something earlier along the lines of prosecutors may say that they don't have the time to fully investigate before they bring criminal charges against a person. I find that offensive. Not from you. I find if a prosecutor says that they don't have time to investigate if a person is innocent or not before they destroy their lives with crime or with criminal prosecutions, one, that's how we are the #1 county for wrongful convictions in this state. We have more wrongful convictions than all other counties combined. And that's not me saying that. That information is made publicly available on the National Registry of Exonerees. And so I think that that is shameful if we should just push bodies through, and mostly Black bodies through, this criminal injustice system, and we respond with, we didn't have time to do a full investigation first. Well, when would you have time? Once they're sitting in prison and you want to waste taxpayer dollars sending them through the appellate process, fighting their release at every turn, and then you want to waste taxpayer dollars a third time, sending them through the conviction integrity unit? When do you have time to do your job and protect people? When is that? And so, no, I don't have 4 years to wait, Robyn. I don't have any time to wait. Our people don't have time to wait. Our people are losing their lives. Families are being decimated, destroyed by the current practices and policies in place. Why is it that we should be told to wait our turn? Why is it that someone in power thinks that it's their job to have until they decide to leave? We live in a democracy.
Right.
Let the people decide. Why is it that we get so complacent with being in a place where no one challenges us and we just feel it's ours and how dare you try to take it from me? No,
And it
it's not.
continues the status quo. It continues the status quo. And I believe that we're living in a time of complete change. And so you've heard the cause for police reform, but Victoria, do you think that this is also a time for prosecutor reform?
Oh yeah, you look around the country. That's one thing that I did before agreeing to, take up this work of running for prosecutor. I needed to see that what it is that I had in my heart and in my mind actually happened on the ground in other places. I needed to see that this was not just, me envisioning some perfect utopian world where all these things happen so perfectly. And I was so relieved when I found out that it's not, that there are there's a movement of progressive prosecutors. Bernie Sanders just endorsed 10 of us. And I can tell you.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, congratulations.
You're the Bernie Sanders endorsee. I want you to tell us all about it.
Yeah.
How
did that manifest?
So I am working very closely with a lot of national organizations who are very invested in changing the prosecutor offices and DA offices around the country, because we all know if you do criminal justice work that you really don't work to end mass incarceration and reform this broken system unless you reform the prosecutor's office, because that's the gatekeeper. Again, that is the person who decides if you come into the system or if you stay out. And so if you don't have a reform-minded, progressive prosecutor in that office beyond just saying that they are, but if you don't have it in their actions, then you don't truly end mass incarceration, you perpetuate it. You don't truly fix a broken criminal justice system, you continue it. And so I am very proud to be a part of a national effort to bring racial equity to this broken system, to hold all bad actors accountable, because we know, for instance, with our law enforcement officers, that a few bad apples can make a whole bunch rotten, right?
True.
And we know that, police brutality is not just when a police officer has their knee on your neck and is killing you. We know that that actually starts when they lie in their police reports, when they refuse to turn on their body-worn cameras against their own department policy, when they come to court and they lie on the stand and none of them are being held accountable. We should not have to wait for a law enforcement officer to brutally take a life before we hold them accountable. And that is a part of this division between the old guard and the new progressive prosecutor candidates that you're seeing spring up. We all, most of us have a background in criminal defense work. So we have the experience of being on the ground in the courtroom, knowing what's actually happening, knowing how the policies from on high are actually, every day playing out in those courtrooms, and how it is affecting the people that we as defense attorneys represent, how it's affecting the victims and how they don't get any justice either. You know,
Right.
for a victim to be told that as an elected prosecutor, you don't know where evidence is stored and you blame someone else for that, that's a problem. Our prosecutors should know where evidence is stored at all times. That's not, you know, a blame game thing that we should do. And we certainly don't need to just focus on, you know, when you do something well, that it erases all the bad things. And I can
Right.
tell you, the number one reason for me that this job and this work has meant so much as I've gone down this path and I travel this journey, I think the worst thing an elected prosecutor can do is lock an innocent person up. I really do.
Mm.
Right, I agree. That's why I don't know that I could run for prosecutor.
It's the worst thing. But no, let me tell you, Robyn, no. But that position assumes that you have to lock innocent people up, to say, like, I couldn't do that.
Right.
You don't have to. That's
Right.
the beauty in this job. You do not have to lock innocent people up. You can have policies and practices that will allow your office to fully investigate, right? To not waste taxpayer dollars 3 times on an innocent person. I applaud Valerie Newman in the Conviction Integrity Unit. In 2.5 years, she secured the release of 20 wrongfully convicted people. But you got to look at, when did those wrongfully convicted people go in? Many of them went in the last 16 years under our current prosecutor. You got to read the record. You got to ask yourself, was this really new evidence that came about? Or was this evidence that was already in the court file at the time that the case was prosecuted, at the time the case went to trial, right? Like, none of us are asking those questions. And because we don't ask those questions, we believe whatever we're being told. And we need to do the independent research and analysis for ourselves. And we will find, when we ask questions, we will get answers.
Wow.
Right.
Well, I want to ask you about the school to prison pipeline. You mentioned that earlier. Your opponent says that her priorities for the next 4 years will be to expand restorative justice programs in juvenile court. That's my home court. And I know that the prosecutor did implement the Right Track program there. But one thing that I'm very nonplussed and disappointed about is, you know, I remember when I used to be in school, and if there was a school fight, you know, it was handled at the school level. Now, when kids get into a skirmish, they're sent down to the juvenile detention facility. So I was just wondering, what is your take on real reform when it comes to juvenile justice with respect to Wayne County? Any ideas?
So I can tell you that our schools have failed our children. When they took social workers out of schools, when they put more police officers in our schools than folks who could address trauma, folks who could address our children not eating, our children not having clean clothing, our children not having a home, that's when we started to fail our kids. And we need to be mindful of that as gatekeepers in this criminal system. We need to be mindful that not everything requires the criminal justice system to touch it. So for instance, last year in Canton, we had a 10-year-old Black child engaged in an incident involving a dodgeball with a white child.
Right.
That child, that 10-year-old Black boy, he was criminalized. He was charged, and his mother found out about it on a recorded telephone call.
Wow.
His mother was told after that incident that there was going to be a policy to do exactly what Attorney McCoy mentioned earlier, to make sure that there is uniformity in the charging decisions, to make sure that this kind of action, this reprehensible action, never happened again to another child. And to this day, if you reach out to the mother of that 10-year-old child, she'll tell you that nothing has changed, that she was told that she was going to get a copy of the new policy, that she's never received it. In fact, she'll also tell you that she and her son have never received an apology for him being criminalized at the tender age of 10. That 10-year-old child, if you Google Kim Worthy's name and you find her Wikipedia page, he's listed in that. He's forever answering questions about it. He's been called a criminal, a thug, a troublemaker, and he has to still go to school in that area.
And that's damage to his psyche that's going to follow him for the rest of his life. Where's the restorative justice in that process?
Right. And
Absolutely.
I know my work as an educational advocate, that's why I was impressed with some of the schools I worked in Detroit. You know, some of the schools I would grade them. I'm a professor, remember, some of them would not get a good grade, but some of the schools were very progressive and they handled issues within the schools. They did restorative circles. I was a part of those restorative circles. They didn't they didn't always just rush to the prosecutor or to the police. They handled things internally. And we need more. So I fault sometimes in those situations the schools. The way I was when I was younger, if we got into issues, you know, I went to Catholic school. The teachers handled it internally. They didn't rush to call the police or call outside authorities. They handled it internally. And I agree with you. I think I've worked at the juvenile court as well. I would like to see that they have more restorative programs in place right now, right? I mean, I know there's an election, but we need change right now. People,
Right.
children and the people of Detroit, Wayne County, they need change now. I mean, and it is predominantly Black. I have white clients too. I say to my working class white clients, I'm like, you're caught up in a system that was designed to oppress, you know, Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. It's designed to oppress Black folk, but white folk get caught up in the system that incarcerates the most people in the world. And now we've got this.
But not with the same numbers. But not with the same numbers. I mean, for Black and brown communities, it's just become really a pandemic. You know, it's beyond an epidemic. But I want to, Victoria, how much do we have you for? How much longer?
I only have 15 more minutes, ladies. I'm so sorry. My team jam-packed my day with event after event after event.
I understand. Well, I just want to get in a couple more questions. So the process of becoming the endorsee of Senator Bernie Sanders, did you have an opportunity to meet or talk with him or Nina Turner at any point during the process?
So Nina Turner, I understand, reached out to my campaign some time ago to ask for my phone number. And I was horrible when I first started my campaign and, you know, not answering unknown calls. And I think I missed her call. Yeah, I know. My understanding is, no, I've never spoken to Senator Sanders directly. My understanding is that his campaign, they do their own independent research. So they researched me. They researched the incumbent, my opponent. They made their own independent, you know, findings on if they wanted to jump in this race and endorse. And, you know, there's a thing called opposition research that campaigns do. We're not allowed to coordinate. So I'm not allowed to share my opposition research with them. They're not allowed to share their opposition research with me. They can't even share what they've researched about me that could be good or bad. So they make their own independent findings, and based on your platform, based on your record, your service in your community, if you truly are a progressive person that they feel will, you know, do the job of a progressive prosecutor in reforming this broken justice system and in ending mass incarceration and turning it around to make sure that it works for all people, which, as Attorney McCoy stated, we know that the system was not designed to work for all people. And so that's why it takes policy and actors to implement those policies and practices to force it to be fair and equitable for all people. And so I can't tell you, because of, you know, campaign finance rules and collusion and things of that nature, I can't tell you exactly what made him want to endorse me. I just got a phone call one day and said, Senator Sanders wants to endorse you. And I was like,
wow.
Oh, wow, really?
Yay. And so you've been fully vetted though, but you went through an intense vetting process.
They all do that.
Wow.
Yeah, they all. So I've been endorsed by several national organizations, Working Families Party. I've been endorsed by Real Justice, along with several other national organizations. That this is the work that they've dedicated, you know, to do. They are dedicated to finding progressive people who can change the criminal justice system and make it something that it's never been before, and make it much better and much more equitable across all races.
Right, and I know you said that you had joined the National Bar Association. I know that they said that they're not necessarily endorsing, but I've been active with them for a number of years, and they have been with this whole police misconduct issue. They have been promoting and encouraging its members to. They've been encouraging more of us Black folk to run for prosecutor, to make sure that there's reform in the system. I went to a session. It was probably 5 years ago with Marilyn Mosby, and
Yeah.
She was talking about like what was happening in Baltimore with Freddie Gray,
Mhm.
and then I went to
Mhm.
something where they had it was Kim Fox, and they had a wonderful panel last summer of progressive prosecutors, and they were encouraging more of us to run for prosecutor, run for state rep. They said they basically put a call to action for lawyers to get out there. And it like they said, if you want to see change, you've got to be a part of the movement of change to make that happen. So you're out there and you're doing forums. And what about, have you been to, because Tracey and I have talked about this with some of the protests. I mean, it's not necessarily safe to be out there in the streets all the time. Have you been doing mainly a lot of work on social media, or like what is your campaign? What does it entail? Like if a person wants to follow you and what you're doing, like how would they do that?
So you can follow us on social media or on our website. You can be added to our email list. But no, I am not staying in the house. I believe in going where the people are. And if the people are in the streets and they are marching and demanding change, then damn it, I'm going to be in the streets marching with them and demanding the change. When you represent people, you represent what they want. You don't represent what you think is best for them. You don't represent what you want. You represent those people that you serve. My dad used to have a saying that it's better to be a servant than to be served. And when you are a true servant, you don't think of yourself. So I put on my mask and I carry my hand sanitizer, but I'm out there with my people. My people are hurting right now. Our people are hurting. And when I say our people or my people, I don't just mean Black folks, not at all. All folks are out there. I'm seeing young, old, Black, white. I'm seeing everybody. And when you talk about a movement, this is a movement. And it is building, it is gaining momentum. People are paying more attention to their prosecutors, right? They're paying attention to their records, and not just the good part of their records, but the not so good things of their record. They are demanding answers. And when they don't get answers, when they don't see their prosecutor out on the street, when they don't feel that their prosecutor is accessible, then they start to say, okay, maybe we need to do something different here. And so I pride myself on being accessible. I pride myself on being transparent. I open myself up to questions, even questions that are tough, right? Questions that may not make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside when I have to turn around and give the answer. But that's not what it's about. It's about being held accountable, and it's about the people that you serve. And you should be allowed to be told when you're doing something wrong. You should be told, you should be allowed to be told as an elected official when you're doing something that the people you serve don't want you to do, and you should be open to that. And that's exactly the kind of elected prosecutor and elected official that I hope to be, that I aim to be, and that I will be, is accessible, transparent, and accountable to the people that I serve.
Okay.
Very good, very good. And when is the New York Times piece coming out on you? You said you had an interview with the NYT earlier today?
I did. So I can't tell you when it's coming out, but I will make sure that when it does come out, that I send it your way.
Oh, fantastic. And what about
Yeah.
the ad? Is your ad up and running? I saw a little
I
Yes.
saw a commercial. Is that what you're talking about, Tracey? The commercial?
Yes, her TV ad, the spot, right.
Yes, so I am very happy to say that we have donors in all 50 states. People are really excited about, this first-time challenger to our long-running incumbent, and we have been very blessed with contributors who want to make sure that this race is successful. And so with all of those folks' help, I have been able to not just go on television for 1 week, but we have just renewed it for a second week.
Oh,
And so, yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you. So we are working hard. We are knocking doors. We are phone banking. We have a texting program. We are in the streets at rallies. I get daily requests in my email for me to speak at rallies because people are liking the message, right? People like it so much that people want to steal the message as their own. So we know that the message is working. We
Right,
know
right.
that it's what the people want. And, it's a great time to be alive. It's a great time to run this kind of a campaign. It is full of energy. We are getting volunteers by the day saying, hey, I met you at a rally and you made me cry. You made me believe that change is real, that change is coming. I want to be a part of that change. How can I throw down for you? How can I make sure that you're in that office? And, as a newcomer who was told by many folks that I should wait, like Attorney McCoy was asking me, why don't you wait? Not that she was proffering that,
I'm
but
not saying that. I know.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
But no, that is a real question that I got from people. Like, why no? Why not just wait until the
Right.
pass the baton on to you, or, no one has ever run against her. This is not going to, turn out well. People won't support you. And I can tell you that win or lose, my community still has me, that I'm not going to disappear, that I love the relationships that I'm building, the coalitions that I'm building with people on the campaign trail, and I will turn it into something for good, even if I'm not successful, because that's what it's about. It's about using my gifts and, my talents to serve the people. Charles Hamilton Houston said that to be a lawyer in this skin, a Black lawyer, that you have one of two options, that you can be a social engineer for justice, or you can be a parasite on your community. And I have always prided myself in being that social engineer for justice. That's why I have always, been in the community as a people's lawyer. You don't have to look very hard to find me. I'm not going to come out when I need something from you. I'm here to serve you. And that's what I'll continue to do, win or lose, in August.
Well, go ahead.
Well, on that note, that's the perfect close. Yes.
And,
Well,
and if somebody wants to volunteer with your campaign, where do they go again? If you could tell us again.
Absolutely. Victoria2020.org.
Okay. Well, thank you, Victoria. Thank you for agreeing to be on our show on Political Coffee.
Thanks for having me.
Robyn,
cheers to
right.
you.
Thanks, positive vibes and positive life.
Best wishes on the campaign trail, and I'll be on the lookout for the new spot and the New York Times.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's running on MSNBC, CNN. Someone said they saw it on BET. Our buyer bought everywhere. So, look out for it on cable TV. I can't tell you exactly where or when, but it's out there. People are seeing it and they love it. And huge shout out to Robyn McCoy's godmother or aunt. I'm sorry.
My aunt.
Your aunt, I would be remiss if I did not shout out that major endorsement from Virgie Rollins, the chair of the Black Caucus for the DNC. She, on a national level, is looking at this race, and she's saying that I'm the change that this county needs. And I'm so honored to have that support. So shout out to your aunt, Robyn.
Yeah, shout out to Aunt Virgie. So, okay. All right. Well, thank you, Victoria.
Okay,
Thank you.
Victoria.
Bye, ladies.
Great
Bye-bye.
to see you. Bye-bye. Have a great
Bye.
weekend. Stay safe out there.
All righty. And and for the record, everyone, I am not endorsing in this race. So I know my Aunt Virgie is, but I'm not endorsing. We have invited Madam Prosecutor Kim Worthy herself to come out to our show. So we'll see, if she's able to come out and give us her side on this, in this race, give us her perspective as the long-standing prosecutor about just some, we'll talk to her about why did she decide to become the prosecutor? Like what is going on with the office presently? What does criminal justice reform look like in her eyes? And so, but that was great to hear from Victoria.
Yes. Well, she says that she's a people's lawyer, and it appears that she wants to be the people's prosecutor. I know that she says that she began her legal career working with Attorney William Swore, and he enjoys big bona fides in the legal community. He's very well respected, and she trained under Bill Swore. I mean, that says a lot. But you mentioned Kim Worthy. I got political mail. I always share this on my Political Diva quick hits, and so Prosecutor Kim Worthy, she says she's running under the header Vote for Experience, along with Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri and Wayne County Sheriff Benny Napoleon.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's a very nice piece. It's a full color pull-out piece, and they each talk about their experience and their accomplishments. And yes, Prosecutor Worthy, she talks about her key accomplishments, that she made Michigan the national model in testing, investigating, and prosecuting cases coming from 11,341 untested rape kits. And then she talks about her priorities for the next 4 years, which includes restorative justice in juvenile courts. So I would enjoy talking with her. I mean, I've always, been on cordial terms with Prosecutor Worthy, but there have been some errors in that office. And I'm glad to see that Val Newman is with the Conviction Integrity Unit. But, I've interviewed Val Newman before on my old show, Politics and Power. And she said, quite frankly, I think, her office was the office that handled a case where the gentleman was wrongfully convicted and got sent away for a number of years, and so now she's come full circle and she's working in the conviction integrity unit. So hey, I don't know, but it makes for an interesting race regardless.
Right, and
of,
I, as I've said, even with the presidential race, I'm about criminal justice reform. I want to actions speak, just like the judges tell us, actions speak louder than words. So it's like, yes, there's a race, but it's like there can be change that happens right now. I know it's my understanding that they work to release a significant amount of the people that were in the jail. But if the prosecutor's office is about change in Wayne County right now, then actions speak louder than words. I would like to see. I have pending cases. They could be more progressive right now. We don't have to wait till August or till January. We don't, for change. Change can happen right now, and actions speak louder than words. Just like when we come into court and our clients, we make representations, and then they ask us, well, what is the documentation? What are the receipts? You can't just go in there saying any kind. So actions speak louder than words. So I would like to see change. You and I have talked about some of the changes. I'm sure we'll continue to talk about what does change look like, restorative justice, more progressive policies. Because I have a number of clients that have mental health issues, drug issues. They going to jail or prison, being put at risk of being sick, getting sick or dying is not what it's about. Okay, yeah, there are some very serious situations where jail or prison may have to be the option, but for most of the cases, I think that they can come up with some alternative programming and put funding into force for that. Yeah.
I don't know, I'm getting some feedback on my mic, but yes, we know that there are some diversion programs that people can enjoy if they have cases in criminal court, but I just think it needs to be expanded. The current prosecutor says that she wants to do that, but here you have, a challenger who says that she's not going to wait, if not now, when? And I just find that very interesting because Prosecutor Worthy has been in office for 16 years and really nobody's been able to touch her. It's interesting when the election cycle began, she really didn't have that much in her campaign war chest. I think about $250,000, but I understand that she's stepping up her fundraising efforts, and you can see the result in pieces like this. And she is going to these candidate forums, and I always say, never underestimate your opponents.
Yes, for sure. So now I know we've talked about the prosecutor's race. But I know we also want to talk about some of the other things that are happening. Today you have the president is going to be in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I think we said that there's going to be a speech. I think it's 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock tonight.
Yeah. So what I find remarkable is that people have been lining up all week to attend this MAGA rally. And it's been, as you know, very controversial because the president says he's not going to wear a face mask. It is going to be held indoors inside a stadium. They expect about 20,000 people plus overflow in another venue. And people are not going to be required to wear masks, yet they have to sign off on a waiver of liability to enter the rally. Wow, really? The guy is speaking out of both sides of his mouth on that one, if you ask me. But what I'm concerned about is I understand there may be some counter protests, and you were telling me earlier about there is expected to be some armed counter protesters there, and I just hope that things don't pop off and get too crazy. I hope no one gets hurt.
Well, yeah, I wasn't at the rally, but I did read on Facebook, on social media. I didn't get a chance to fact check it elsewhere, but there was some kind of indication that there were going to be 1,000 Black men, African American men, that were going to not necessarily coming to the rally, but doing their own event where they were going to be armed, and as they're apparently they're allowed to open carry in Oklahoma, and that they were going to be expressing their rights to open carry in Tulsa. And I was expressing to you, I'm concerned. You got the Trump rally, and then if you've got 1,000 African American men who are allowed to be armed, just as the people here, you had people at our Capitol that were armed, and I'm just concerned about the, the climate, and do we have, hopefully they have police officers that can make sure that everything is in order, and actually at the actual rally too, that things will be okay. I mean, I know the president had made some statement that, and that if folks come, and it's not the African American men, this is separate, the counter protesters. He was saying if counter protesters come to the rally, that it'll be dealt with differently than in some of the other states. And so that is concerning, because we're all Americans, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, we're all Americans. And we don't have time for having Civil War like environments. That's just not cool. Kids are watching the adults. I have my mug, teacher. What I teach, what's your superpower? We as the adults need to set the best example for the kids of how to conduct ourselves. The way for you to protest, the best way, you just did the program earlier. I caught the tail end of it, on voting. The best way for you to protest is to vote. And that's, but actually getting, we just got to be careful. Plus we've got COVID-19, and the numbers have spiked in Arizona, Texas, Florida, Tulsa. Tulsa has already a number of cases.
Right.
Yes.
Well, there is a concern about whether or not this MAGA rally is going to, as a consequence of it, will it become a super spreader event? And I mean, I'm deathly afraid of catching COVID-19, because a number of my friends have perished from it, or, died as a result of complications. And I, don't know if it was exactly COVID-19, but I just think that for the President of the United States of America to pick Tulsa, Oklahoma to hold his first MAGA rally, I think that's disrespect in light of the fact that, we just observed Juneteenth yesterday. And why is it that he is picking Tulsa, Oklahoma, where we used to have Black Wall Street until it was destroyed by mob violence on May 31st and June 1st in 1921? I just, it's offensive to me personally, and it's doubly offensive when POTUS says that he is the one who was responsible for making Juneteenth famous. Really? Wow.
Well, maybe he's saying, again, I've talked about this before, like it would be interesting to be in the strategy room for the Trump campaign. I mean, we can see how some of the things are playing out, but if the thinking was that you're going to be in Tulsa and you're bringing light to or Juneteenth, that maybe a lot of Black people do know about Juneteenth, but maybe he's talking about the white folks. There are white folks that may not be educated, may not know about Juneteenth. But I'm like, if you're coming in with a mindset of I'm going to try to be the healer and make change in the system, then you and I have written that letter to the president asking for the release of former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. There are brothers and sisters that are locked up in the prison industrial complex that some of them are sick or have committed nonviolent crimes. The president could, just like we said with the prosecutors raised, like right now, there's change that can be done right now. Actions speak louder than words. The president could be, instead of just saying that he's going to do certain stuff, and I know there are some things that he has done. There's the First Step Act, things like that, but actions speak louder than words. Under Obama, they released folks that were in the prison industrial complex in the federal system. So Trump could very well, they could be doing that. I know they said they had to be careful about who they released and things like that, but there are some people that are clearly not going to be violent. They could be releasing those folks. Reparations. You and I have talked about, and I've done some programming and classes about reparations. They have, and I've studied, my background's anthropology, and I've studied a lot about some of the programming that the government has done with Native Americans. Like if you're Native American, you can get access right now you can get a full ride to certain schools, you can get health care, you can have casinos. Black folks, we built this country, and it's long overdue in compensating us for what we've done. We fought, and I was watching Malcolm Nance on MSNBC yesterday. We fought in every war that this country has had from the beginning of its creation. So we built this nation, and it's just like Martin Luther King. It's like America has given us a check mark insufficient funds, and it's long overdue I was in scripture earlier. It's been past 400 years. America is long overdue for paying us what we're owed, paying us and money. Okay, because people are like, what should we do? We should, there's a study. There's HR 40. Okay, we don't need this. My mom said this too. We don't need to study. We need our money. They need to cut us the check. Housing, help with housing, education, healthcare. I mean, the list goes on.
The whole 9 yards. The whole 9 yards. Well, yes, I mean, you pointed out earlier that the president, POTUS, has made some steps towards criminal justice reform. And yes, I acknowledge that. I mean, I actually am a justice ambassador with Prison Fellowship, and they have a strong connection with POTUS. Because it was founded by a former state legislator here in Michigan. And but I just think, earlier this week he unveiled an executive order on police reform. And frankly, I don't know what your opinion is on it. I'd like to hear, but I just don't think it went far enough. I mean, he says, oh, there's going to be a chokehold ban, but if a police officer feels his life is or her life is in danger, they can use it. I mean, there should just be a blanket ban on chokeholds, because you don't need to do that to another human being in order to apprehend them. For example, in Camden, New Jersey, they never lay a hand. First of all, they not only did they defund the police in Camden, New Jersey, they have actually abolished their police department, and now they have a form of public safety. And it's interesting because they showed video, I think it was on CNN, of how they were going about apprehending an individual. It looked a little bit like a parade, but you had about maybe a dozen police officers, and then you had the suspect, and they just walked this suspect about 5 city blocks until it was a male in this case. He was apprehended, but it went peaceably. No one was ever hurt on the police side or the suspect side. And these chokeholds, the VNR, the carotid asphyxiation, that is something that you don't even do to animals in this country. And it does need to be abolished. And I don't think the president went far enough with respect to that. What do you think?
I think, I did share that I saw that I shared on my social media that he had done that, and I said it was a start, but more importantly, I shared what the mayor of Atlanta, what her programming was more intensive. And I think that the president needs to look to more of what she was talking about. I mean, it should clearly be a ban on the chokehold. There should be, I've said it before, the police need to be reprogrammed, retrained, reconditioned. I've mentioned to you, I don't know if you watched that show that's on Amazon Prime. It's called Homecoming, and Julia Roberts is in the first season, and Janelle Monáe is in the second season, and they're talking about soldiers that are sent over to war, and they come back and they give them medicine without them knowing it, and they're making the soldiers think that they can help them forget about the war and go back to regular lives. And then, and I don't want to give it away for people who haven't watched it, but I think that there's clear, and I have friends that are police officers. I talk to them. It's like in America, it's like the police are conditioned to kill disproportionately black men, women, and children, and they treat us, like you said, like animals. And I know we'd had Abdul Saeed on the show, and I'm still listening to his book Healing Politics, and he talked about how when he was the director of public health, how that a number of people from the suburbs would bring their dogs and drop them off in Detroit, and how they had it set up where they would take the dogs and euthanize them. And there were, again, people from the suburbs coming to complain about that. But they weren't looking at the other side of it, is that you had some of these dogs that were going and killing, children, adults, and it was like he was saying that the people, the animal lovers, were valuing the animals' lives more so than the black people, the black residents of Detroit. And that's what the issue is here in America, is that human life is important. Black lives matter.
But why is that? Has there been in this country a dehumanization of black folk? Yes, at one point in time, black folk were considered to be 3/5 human. And so I'm getting some feedback from the microphone, but I just don't understand where that mentality comes from. And that whole thing needs to be reformed. But hey, you said Netflix. Did you see the Five Bloods, Spike Lee's The Five Bloods on Netflix? And did you check out David Chappelle on YouTube? You know, he talked about George Floyd.
Oh no! So I did see
Dave.
I watched Dave Chappelle, so I was really impressed with his program on YouTube. I have not had a chance yet to watch The Five Bloods on Netflix.
Yeah,
I found
it interesting, his comments about Candace Owens. You asked me about Candace Owens earlier this week, and he called out Candace Owens and Laura Ingraham because, you know, Laura Ingraham was basically bashing LeBron James because he made comments about the debacle in Georgia with the primary and people's attempts to vote, and he talked about how our whole electoral system is systemically racist. And Laura Ingraham says, just shut up and bounce the ball.
Yeah, she said, "Shut up and dribble," and I'm just like,
Shut up and
I don't even
dribble.
know why is she still on Fox News? I don't even understand how she could still be on Fox News. I mean, LeBron James, he brings it. He is a superb athlete. He is a social justice activist. He does his thing, and it's like, who is Laura Ingraham? Who is she anyway? You know, she should be gone. She shouldn't be. I watch Fox News. I watch particularly Harris Faulkner's sister that's on there. I know some people don't like to watch Fox News. They talk about Fox News, but I watch Fox News. I see some very progressive things happening on Fox News. But when I saw Laura Ingraham, because you know, there's some people like in this household, my partner did not watch Fox News at all. But you know, but when I saw Laura Ingraham saying that, I was just like, why is she still even on there saying that? That is so unacceptable. You know, she's basking in her privilege, and that's a privilege she shouldn't have. She shouldn't shut up and dribble. You know, this is a man that is amazing. He's an athlete. He gives back to the community. I mean, what has she done? Who is she?
Well,
you know?
she could stay to run her mouth. And I watch Fox News too, not with the same regularity as CNN or MSNBC or C-SPAN, but you know, you gotta watch everybody. So that's why I watch them. I find Tucker Carlson's show more interesting than others.
Oh, the prompt just said, just so you know, Tracey, it says that the video it has ended, but I'm still recording on my my Zoom. So just so you know.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess we were going to wrap it up fairly soon anyway.
Oh, I'm having problems hearing you too.
Yeah, I can't. There's a distortion.
Yeah, I'm still recording though, so I'm able to take this recording and download it to my YouTube. So, but good. What were you saying? Good. Yeah, we probably should wrap it up because we're getting our prompts, I guess. So you were saying, I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
Well, the trial today, they're being a mock trial on today. They're going to Mike Burton and
Yes, I did hear about that. They said it was something. There was some announcement from the National Lawyers Guild, and they were going to be doing that today. I think at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
Right. So.
I might check it out. I don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, and you know, we've got Ben Trump will be coming on next. We'll be at the Black Women Lawyers meeting next week. So that's definitely something to look forward to. And you know, we'll have more programming. So yeah, so everyone, this is why we're having a little technical difficulties, but this has been Political Coffee with Robyn and Tracey. Tracey, do you want to show mug? Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. You have a good evening. I'll talk to you later. Okay.
You too, Robyn. See you next time.
I see your mug there. Yeah. Like, okay. All right.